take this for a start, because there's been quite a long history of this. First question is, I suppose, when you say stem cells, what do you mean? Most stem cell transplantation these days is hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, which is done for cancers, particularly cancers, leukemias, cancers of the bone marrow, and lymphomas. Those types of stem cell transplantation have been done in mice, or in the past, the sort of cruder form of bone marrow transplantation has been done in Niemann-Pick C. And we presume Niemann-Pick C1 because we didn't know in the past the gene wasn't available without any evidence of benefit. There is some suggestion that in Niemann-Pick C2 that such a therapy might be helpful because it's possible that the NPC2 gene product, the protein, is transducible. In other words, it can pass from one cell, from an unaffected cell to an affected cell and correct the defect. And many studies have been done in Niemann-Pick C1, in the most common sort of the mouse. Peter Penchev, many years ago, took cell cultures and mixed cells together. There was no evidence of what's called cross-correction. In other words, the normal cells didn't fix the defective cells. Matt Scott has done work where he made what's called a chimeric mouse, a mouse that was part wild type and part Niemann-Pick C1 mouse. In those mice, the wild type cells in the cerebellum and elsewhere survived normally. The Niemann-Pick C1 cells disappeared. So there was no evidence either that the normal cells were correcting the abnormal cells. There was no evidence that anything toxic in the abnormal cells was actually hurting the normal cells. Liver transplantation was first done, reported 23 years ago in Niemann-Pick C. It corrected the liver problem, but as we might have expected, it didn't do anything to neurologic disease. Now, there may be cases where there are young children with liver disease where someone raises the issue of transplanting a liver, which may well, in fact, save that child's life, and that child may go many years without developing neurologic problems. So that, I think, is a separate issue. I think this question might be getting at the issue of embryonic stem cell transplantation or neural precursor stem cell transplantation. I think the answer to that is we don't know. There's a great deal we don't know about stem cells and these sorts of stem cells in general. There hasn't been a formal study of Niemann-Pick C. There is a formal study going on in another lysosomal storage disease called neuronal serial lipofuscinosis, which has 8 subtypes. Types 1 and 2 are being studied. The data haven't been published. I happen to know that the data is on my committee. I can't discuss it in detail, but I could say in general terms it seems to be safe, but efficacy is another matter altogether. But maybe my colleagues would like to comment.
I think Mark touched on it, the biology of NPC1 means that you will see other diseases corrected by these approaches before you will see NPC1. You touched on it with NPC2, some of the other lysosomal storage diseases do not have as many problems in development. We're years away from it. People are working on it. But you will see it happen in other diseases first because there are additional problems because of the biology of NPC1.
And having said that, even in diseases where it's an enzyme deficiency, where the enzyme is elaborated, it's not always effective. It does help in some lysosomal storage diseases, but by no means all, and it's not a benign procedure, at least hematopoietic stem cell transplantation. We know of one child with NPC2 was transplanted, but unfortunately didn't survive the transplant, so it's not a trivial undertaking. The next question, I think someone was probably writing this and the pen got ahead, or the brain got ahead of the pen, but I think what the question is asking whether there's a familial incidence of Alzheimer's disease and Niemann-Pick disease, or if there's a relationship between the two. It says what research, if any, has been completed on this. Well, Karen has done some work, which has been presented before, suggesting, raising the possibility there may be an increased incidence of some neurodegenerative disorders of Niemann-Pick C. The difficulty in establishing that is that you have to, for any such disease, rare diseases, you have to establish that the observed frequency of a disease in the population is greater than the expected frequency. Fortunately, we do have quite a lot of data on the expected frequency of Alzheimer's disease, which of course, as you know, is not rare. It's an age-dependent disease. So once you get to be over 90 years of age, you have a very high chance of developing Alzheimer's disease. The same applies to Parkinsonism, to a lesser extent to ALS, and similar diseases. So you heard today about the research that Dr. Sigransky is planning, and I think that probably addresses it. But again, extra comments?